Welcome to Coffee with Janis and Karen.
We get a lot of questions via text or messenger or whatever. And people are interested in our family. As in the Mathis trio, they want to know about it. And so it's really hard to do a whole genealogical breakdown via text. Not that we mind the questions, but we just don't feel like we give it maybe as much as we should. You know, Janice spends a lot of time, responding to text and messages, and so anyway, so you may be able to tell it's getting close to Valentine's Day, and this may air after that. I don't know, but my dad was born on Valentine's Day. And so. And he was born in 1933. The best. Now, I'm not the
I know, where's Kim when we need her?
I know. And my dad. I mean, my dad has things typed out, and they have gone to different states to do history.
He's quite the history buff.
Oh, yes. And he remembers everything. Well, I don't. I'm somewhere in the so-and-so, you know. But I don't, because, I mean, I don't have to, because they've already done
they've got it taken care of.
I'll go look at it. Yes, but anyway, we want to talk a little bit about one of the most defining things that happened and in our dad's life that kind of, I feel like, had a way of making the Mathis family who they were, and it was a tragedy is what it was that happened. So our granddad John was married to Violet. Yes, and her last name was Hazard, and so she married John, and so she's Violet Minnie Mathis. They had kids. They had Uncle Donald, Annie. They had a couple of sons that died when they were very small. And then my dad came along, and then your dad came along. Okay. Well, Grandmother Violet was a very, very strong Christian. And so she had found out one day, this is about the time your daddy was 3 and my daddy was 5. She found out that one of her cousins was going to be having surgery. Well, this was back then. And so she was concerned that she didn't know for sure if her cousin was saved. And so she wanted to make sure. And so our granddad, took her in his car and parked on one side of the road. And because they lived on the other side of the road. And so she was going to cross the road. And it was the highway going from Hempstead to Navasota, if you're local. And so she was going to cross the road to go talk to him about Jesus. And a car hit her and killed her. And so Granddad's right there. You know. And none of them ever really went into the gory details so much. But you know, we
know that Granddad scooped her up.
There was no surviving the wreck. And so the man who hit her was devastated. And so Daddy was at home when he heard the news, you know, and he was 5. And it was devastating. His older sister, Amy.
She was 16 at the time. 15 or 16.
And so she had decided pretty quickly, well, I'm going to quit school and I'm going to raise these boys. But her teachers were like,
your mama would have wanted
you to finish. And so she did. And she kept that high school graduation, you know, diploma hanging on her wall. But anyway, it was a horrible tragedy. And the whole community was just so hurt, you know, for them. Because you had these kids now.
Little kids,
And your dad was talking to my dad one day and said, I don't remember her at all. And my dad said, well, I think you're better off. And I don't know, because he doesn't know. There's no way to fill those shoes to know. But what I noticed growing up was my dad always thought that the job of the mom, the place of the mother, it was like some elevated position to my dad. My dad thought that he would quote that little poem, and the end of it goes, "The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world." And so my dad, for all that the years I can remember, always, even for me, because I was a mom, he thought, "Oh, that's so awesome."
Yes.
Because he just had those little glimpses, of his mom. He remembered, of course, having a great memory. He remembers her pushing him on a grapevine swing out in the woods, that kind of thing. Yeah. And she was a joyful person.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they had to pull together as a family. And life revolved around Jesus. Yeah. It revolved around church and singing and making music with a guitar or something. And so anyway, I can look back on that and see. At the time when I was really struggling, trying to figure out, well, Lord, that wasn't necessary.
Right. Yeah, why did that have to happen?
This was a great person. I never got to meet her.
Right.
And I could look at old pictures of her, and I would look at pictures of me, and I would see the features. Yeah. And so I felt like, we missed out on that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so and I wrote that little song, "The Other Side of the Road," that we used to sing. And it made me realize, would I walk across the street for somebody else like that? Man.
I think you would.
Do you think so?
I think you would. Yeah.
But that was what I got out of that. On the other side of the road, I mean, there's somebody who needs to know.
Yeah.
And it just solidified the family.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's the one thing in our history that we have that just kind of turned the Mathis family into a really close knit family. Now, the brothers had kids and they have kids, and we're not as close. That's just a natural progression. Yeah. You're not as close to all the distant relatives. But the story is important to keep.
Yes.
And to continue, that she cared enough about someone, to go across the street.
Karen, I've often wondered if she prayed for her children's children.
I think so.
Yeah. And like for the salvation of her children's children. I mean, I just have wondered that.
Yeah. But the history that we have, that makes us. Or it could break you. It could have broken the family.
Yeah.
They could have decided, well, God doesn't care about us.
Right. He took our mom.
He doesn't love us. So we're not going to do that. And Janis, I've seen this. Yeah. I have seen in my life people who have gone through tragedy, and it's not even that big. It's like somebody said something bad to them at church. Yeah. Or that they had this standard, the man-made standard at church. I'm talking man-made standard that really grated against them, and they felt like as a young teenager that they were singled out and the church was picking on them and blah blah blah. And so here's what they've done. Here's what I've seen them do. Instead of letting God use that in their life to create character and to see beyond that, to draw a bigger circle. Yeah. What they do is they will leave God and say, well, God did this to me. Right. And so then they will abandon God completely. And so, what they end up doing? They end up going into like, oh, I'm going to take this crystal. And this crystal is going to tell me things about life.
Or this book.
Yeah.
by this particular author.
Yeah, and it's almost, they try to do everything that mimics Christianity, but they try to do it without God.
Yeah.
So they try to replace everything in their life from, you know, the way they meditate, you know, or anything like that. They replace it when it was, instead of letting it grow you. And so I guess if we had to come up with a lesson for this discussion today, and you've heard it so many times, bitter or better.
Yeah.
And so many things do happen when you're in that youthful time of life that can either make you or break you. And instead of lashing out, well, go ahead and lash out at God. Go ahead, but don't throw him away.
Right.
God can handle
He can handle it. Yes. Yeah. We have found out God can handle way more than, you know, you think he can.
And because that's kind of where I was when I was trying to figure out what was going on with why did my grandmother have to die? Why, blah, 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 blah. And so I began finding out and looking, and God began speaking into my heart things that I would have not known. And so don't abandon the Lord.
Yeah, well, Karen, that kind of made me think, you know, I've heard there's kind of a newer thing, maybe in the past 3 or 4 years, I've heard people deconstructing their faith.
Yes.
So, I'm not really, maybe my picture of that looks different, but it's kind of like breaking down what you've always been taught and believed. Now, that's really probably not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
You got to know why you believe what you believe, But the thing about it is, once you deconstruct, then you need to reconstruct. And I think that is where people are missing it.
I do too.
Yeah.
They've thrown it all away and there's nothing left. That's like when Jesus cast out those demons, he says, and the house is all swept and garnished, and then the demon comes back and is like, whoa, look at this, I'm coming back. It's
knock.
Yeah. And they just barge in.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So, fill it back up.
Yes.
That's so important. Yeah. And this has been
Coffee with Janis and Karen.